This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more. G'day guys, Radio Mike here and welcome to Mike Talks. This is a Friday bonus kind of content thing I do some Fridays. Well, so far it's been every Friday since I announced it, but I assume eventually I might get tired of doing it. I am so excited for this week's Mike Talks because it is with someone who is someone that I really, really admire and someone whose work I just think is incredible and have been following for a very long time before I got into being someone who worked in radio and podcasting. So back when I was at uni, I discovered Aunty Donna. If you don't know them, you need to know them. They are amazing, a comedy sketch group from Australia, and yeah, I just think these guys are incredible. They have just launched a Netflix series that is available worldwide, or as Broden clarifies to me, it's not available in North Korea and mainland China, but if you're not in those countries, you can watch it. So go check it out. They also do a podcast, the Aunty Donna podcast. They do live shows, which obviously have been on hold since since COVID, and their YouTube channel, which is just Aunty Donna. Go and check them out. Broden is, as I said, one of the three, and he was really gracious to give up a fair bit of his time today in what I can only imagine is a very, very busy period for the guys, and it was so fun to meet him and chat to him. I've met him before, but I met him previously as a fan. That's the only time I've met him, when I met him in, I think it was 2015 after one of Aunty Donna's comedy festival shows. I've got a photo of Aunty Donna and a bunch of my friends, which was really, really cool. If you want to support this show, which comes out every Thursday, and then obviously the Mike Talks on Friday, the best way to support this is to go to radiomike.com.au, don't forget the .au, and buy a sticker pack for $20. There's 5 stickers there. They're really cool stickers, and it just helps support the show and helps me be able to do the show, where I can bring you episodes like this, as well as the main 20th Century Boy episodes, which come out on Thursday. And you can also listen to my newest project, Harry Potter and the Boys, my Harry Potter fan fiction podcast, where I read fan fiction of Harry Potter that I wrote when I was in year 7 at school. All right, enough plugging, enough of that. Let's get into the chat with Broden. And you'll hear at the top here, we were just trying to sync up the audio, and there was a bit of fun had there, so I just included it in the podcast. It's about a minute before we properly get into the chat. Enjoy, and have a fantastic week. Enjoy, Broden. Bye-bye.
I'll give you a sync.
Yep. Should we both clap?
Sure.
All right.
One.
We should have counted. Yeah, we...
This is good content for the podcast, right? 1, 2,
3.
Oh, we're out of sync.
I'm just going to start. I'll figure it out. out.
There's so many claps you could visually line up with. Yeah. There's podcasts that count to 4. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that seems to help.
It's a good way of doing it. Do you want it? Should we do that?
Yes.
All right, you start.
1,
2,
3,
4. All right, and then do you clap or do you
you're the producer. I've never put a podcast together in my life, and I never will.
I reckon we just start, and if we end up hideously out of sync, we just cop it, and the listeners just cop it. All right, here we go.
And we'll feel it.
All right. I am so excited about this. I sent a DM on Instagram to this guy last week. I slipped in expecting to never hear a reply. Not immediately, but got a reply from Broden Kelly, from Aunty Donna, 1/3 of the performing team of Aunty Donna. Thanks for joining me, man.
An absolute pleasure. And I think it's worth mentioning, the way to reach out is in the unsolicited DMs in Instagram. That's where I live. I sit there all day, just stalking, looking who said that, that's where I am. So, Mike, you played it perfectly. You played it like Matthew Hayden at the MCG on Boxing Day.
I did say in the DM, hey man, if I need to go through more official means, like feel free to tell me. But I kind of, the reason I kind of was in touch with you was because you did do an episode of Willosophy. So I thought, I'll just put another message in that's kind of related to philosophy and then tack on the end, hey, do you want to do my podcast too? And it worked. We're here doing it.
It would be very silly of me not to do your podcast. This is what a lot of people don't know, and probably your listeners. Radio Mike, Podcast Mike, whatever he wants to be called, is one of the most powerful media men in Melbourne. You cross Mike, you hurt. And everyone knows this.
Yeah.
Don't cross Mike.
If you have a podcast and you cross me, you don't have a podcast anymore. Like that's what is pretty much starting to happen.
No NordVPN ads for you. No, you get nothing.
Yeah. Hey man, you and Aunty Donna as a whole launched a Netflix series at 7:01 p.m. last night at the time of recording. Did you get much sleep last night? How are you?
I haven't slept in 2 weeks, Mike. Like I slept like 4 hours last night, and I'm a guy who needs his 8.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So you're getting 50%.
Yeah, and I haven't been exercising. I feel shocking, but I've also I'm just very busy, but it's also for wonderful reasons in that we've been sitting on this show, not allowed to talk about it from the day that we got the phone call from Netflix saying we'd like you to make the show. It's been 2 years. So we had contracts. We weren't allowed to talk about it we weren't allowed to say we're working on this show. Couldn't tell our fans. They've been asking for a year why we don't make content anymore. And I haven't been able to say, we're just about to give you so much content.
Yeah.
So we literally just been walking around not being able to talk about it. And it was hard. Yeah. But now it's kind of like this a purge of information everywhere.
Hey, can I just circle back to the phone call from Netflix? Who makes that call? Who actually rings you personally and says, hey guys, we've decided to make your show? Is it the CEO?
It was kind of cool. It's a cool story. Yeah, Ted Sarandos from, because we found out when it was back in DVD ages. That's how long ago we found out we had the show. They were still only doing DVDs. There was talk of House of Cards, but it was only talk. It's a cool story. Like we hooked up with Ed Helms from The Office and the Hangovers production company, and they were like, yeah, let's try and make a TV show together. And they kind of corralled it in this direction where they thought it could appeal to America and the general public. And they made us really good sell. But we were going over for a tour, and they organized that we'd pitch at the same time. And we're like, well, this will be a funny thing to do for a few days, just go into Apple and Amazon and all these funny places and act like they're going to give us a show. And so we went into all of them. And, we just didn't take it very seriously and stuffed around and did little crappy jokes and showed them memes and and then we sort of did our tour and it was lovely. And then we went home and we were in this office, the office I'm in now. Mm-hmm. Mark was standing over there and we were podcasting, I think, which is the new medium. And we...
Thank you for informing me of podcasting. I should check it out.
Podcasting's where it's at. It's like radio, but whenever you want. And our manager came in, and our manager called and said, "Right now, I need to answer the phone right now." I'm like, fuck. And then our producer, not Ed Helms, not the person below Ed Helms, but the person below, the third below. His name's Brett Harris. He's a lovely man. So
is he like
cool dude?
The junior vice president of the company or something like that?
Yeah. Oh man, all the names of everyone in these companies. He's like, I think he's just producer, but he just called us and it was very nonchalant. He's just like, hey, so hey guys, so Netflix like the show. They want to make 6 episodes. And Mark, who is the most emotional because of his Sicilian heritage, was like, he just screamed. And I just sort of froze up, and then Zach was very, and we all kind of just freaked out for an hour, and then we're like, but we can't tell anyone, and then we took the day off. We were going to do some work. We went, fuck that noise. And then so it was a wonderful day, but it was kind of it was a weird because it took another year for it to be locked in. Like the phone call we had that day was like, so start packing your bags. Let's go.
Wow.
You're moving over here.
You're
I'm
going
like, yeah.
you're going to Sydney, like in
You're going to
Australian Idol
Sydney.
when they get in.
Sophie Monk, you're going to Sydney, you know? Your days of performing at Movie World are over. And took another year before, like, just because the way it is, it just took a year, and it was like just nerve-wracking because the whole time we're just like, this is going to fall through at any moment. This is going to fall through. And because that's what you hear about Hollywood, and it just never did, luckily for us.
And is the show like, is it written? Are there parts of the show that are written before this, or like have you written a pilot? Have you what stage is it up to?
Where we've always wanted to make a TV show. Like even before we started doing YouTube content, that was our thing we wanted to do. And like when we started in 2012, my whole dream was just to be like Leno and Woodley, or like Monty Python or the Young Ones or anything like that. Gotcha. I wanted to be, you do live shows and you tour them around and you do Edinburgh and you build up this core little live fan base. And then one day, hopefully a TV producer comes and you can sign a TV deal and you present that as a TV show. That was my kind of mentality. But a year in, we just put some videos up on YouTube, which was the new thing. And they went really well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, see, YouTube used to be the thing. Now it's podcasting.
Yes.
And so we did that. And then and that started to build our audience. So we kind of shifted away. Like we started to sell out shows wherever we went because we had this YouTube audience who really liked us. And that's where a lot of young people were watching things. Like no one was watching normal TV. They were watching YouTube stuff. And we kind of realized we don't really need TV, but we wanted to make one because it's like all we've ever wanted to do is make an Aunty Donna TV show. Yeah. We made a pilot at Stan. And that never went anywhere. And ABC, we didn't get the chance to make the series there. So we kind of started to look.
I think I saw was it the Fresh Blood pilot you guys did, or was it?
Yeah, Fresh Blood. So
yeah,
it's part of they make 5, or they made like 20 little mini series for ABC iView, almost like sketches for lots of cool different groups around Australia. And out of that, they took 5 and turned them into pilots. And out of that, they made 2. And we were the 3 that weren't made.
Oh,
yeah, but no, looking back on it, we would have been like 5 years ago now. And in the 5 years since that, I've only learned all the things that, I'm glad I learned that would have been mistakes made in that show.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we're alternative. We're very different. We're not, we're not a Channel 7 show or a Channel 9 show. What doing this show has on Netflix has allowed us to do is just continue to just be weird and alternative. And if we appeal to like 10% of Australia, Netflix goes out to like 190 countries. So it's just broadening that 10% to other places. It allows us to keep being weird and alternative. And I don't know if we would have had the chance to do that if we just made an Australian show.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I watched the first step last night with my housemate and we loved it. We were laughing nonstop. So congratulations.
I saw your story. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, no, I'm sure me sharing the story and tagging you in it really helped bump up the numbers. I'm sure.
I'm getting all the data live. I'm getting the data live. And it was a big spike because everyone knows the power you hold in Melbourne.
But that's in podcasting. I have no power in Netflix. So it's actually surprising to me that surged the downloads.
Well, this will interest you. Do you know in America, Netflix has a radio station?
Really? And
yeah, so obviously there's Sirius XM is the big thing over there, the digital radio, paywall, and people it was like people pay to have special radio, which is such an absurd idea, like living in Australia. But they just have a channel dedicated to their Netflix comedy content. And
do they just
they have hosts.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so they do little snippets. Do you remember in the 90s on Australian radio when you drive around and there'd be like, maybe on Triple M, there'd be a bit of like, Jebediah, and then they'd just play like a 10-second snippet of Arj Barker, and then they'd play the do you remember that?
Well, I was only like 3 in the night. I was born in 94. Okay. So
right.
sorry, man. I think you're like
here
6 or 7. Yeah, you're showing your age bit there.
Well, yeah. Well, in my day, they used to play stand up on the radio, and it was good. Yeah, but it's kind of fun. It kind of makes sense. Pre-podcasts, of course.
Pre-podcast, yeah. Just a side note: have you ever had to like explain Because now I feel like kids today, and we're bloody adults. Kids
Now
today,
you're the old one.
yeah, they don't even know what radio is. So you know how you used to explain podcasts as like you just did before. Oh, podcasts are like radio, but whenever you want. Now I like explain radio as like, yeah, it's like podcasts, but not whenever you want. You have to be listening at a specific time.
It's the inverse. You know what's even
Yeah.
scarier is I'm already out of date as well on that, and that Twitch is the thing. Twitch is it.
Yeah.
Twitch is it, man.
Twitch is not podcasts. We've all in the time since we started this podcast, we've moved from podcast to Twitch. Wow.
It's scary, but like, because it's something that just like, usually I can find an in with all the new things. Like, you understand why people like it and why it's a thing. But like Twitch, the core premise of Twitch is just that you're hanging out with a person while they play video games, but you're not playing it. So like when I was growing up, that was the worst thing, when you go to your friend's house and they play GoldenEye and they don't let you have the controller. But that's literally what Twitch is. Sometimes they're funny or sometimes they're really good, but I just like, it makes no sense to me. Yeah, and it's scary.
And you don't even have the option to be like, can I have a shot? Like because you can't. You're not with them. You can't have a shot.
And you can't even walk outside. You can't talk to their mum in the kitchen. You can't, like play with the brother or sister. Or there's nothing. You just go sit there.
Because one of the tactics you could do in that situation as a kid is go to the kid's mum or dad and be like, and look a bit sad and be like, oh, what's wrong? It's like, oh, Tim's playing and I haven't really gotten the chance to have a turn. And then the mum will like storm in and be like, Tim, give your friend a turn on the PlayStation, please.
It's making me think of all like the social etiquettes of going to a friend's house. Like when your mum or your dad picks you up and your dad or your mum goes, do you have something to say? And then you go, yes. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Johnson. And then they go, he was an absolute pleasure. He's welcome anytime. That is so funny.
Do you know what was the worst? I don't know if you ever had the misfortune of experiencing this, but when a friend's parent was okay with telling you off, like,
oh yes.
Did you ever get in trouble from a friend's parent? Because that was the worst. Because friends' parents are supposed to love their kids' friends and hate their kids, right?
Yes.
And then suddenly you're in this situation where you do something wrong, expecting the friend's parent to not care. But the friend's parent actually yells at you. Hated.
Yeah, that's fucked. That's a fucked person, man. They're breaking the social rules. That's the etiquette is whatever the guest kid does is
just
fine.
Okay for that
and then
day. Yeah.
when the door closes and he's gone, you can ram that kid and just smash his good name.
Yeah.
What the fuck was wrong with that kid? That kid's never fucking coming over. Fuck that kid. Like, you can be like that, but never chastise the kid. Never.
No.
That's because I got told off once by our neighbors. Neighbors' friend, and like me and my brother were over and we were being naughty and wrestling, and they were and they went us, and that's stayed with me to the age of 31.
It's traumatizing. I remember on the inverse though. I remember at kindergarten. This just came back to me. It's funny how memories just come back. I was at a friend's house and. Do you remember the movie The Land Before Time with the dinosaurs?
Very much so. Yes, awesome.
Yeah, so he had a little like plush toy of Ducky from The Land Before Time, who's like
which is a traumatic story in itself.
Yeah.
Have you heard about Ducky?
Oh yeah, the voice actor. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
but let's move on from that.
We won't address that. And I remember saying to him, oh, that's Ducky from The Land Before Time. And he was like, no, it's not. It's just a dinosaur. I'm like, no, it's definitely Ducky from The Land Before Time. And this kid, and like when you're in kinder, I guess you have friends, but it's just like we go to the same kinder, right? And he got so angry that he just started kicking me, like non-stop, just kicking me. And his mum came in and was like, what are you doing? Go to your room. And then I was just at this kid's house playing with his Ducky from The Land Before Time toy while he was in his room. And it was so weird.
And this shit stays with you. This shit, that will be with you to your dying day.
Clearly,
because your mind is so formative. And like, that's such a trauma. That's like the most socially awkward, traumatic thing you could go through.
Like every time I think of The Land Before Time now, I think of that moment where I was just kicked relentlessly by a kid from my kindergarten.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Oh my God, weird kids. I wonder where all these weird kids are now. Do they Do they level out?
Yeah.
Are they running the Commonwealth Bank now? What are they doing?
um, back to the show. So you filmed it all in America? Or was it filmed?
We flew, we wrote a large chunk of it, and we filmed it all in Glendale, which is in Hollywood, and then we edited the whole thing in Hollywood as well.
And how long was it? Like, because I don't remember you guys ever being in America for a long time, or did you just not post about it?
We weren't allowed to post about it, but I went to Disneyland twice, and I went to Universal 4 times.
Yeah.
So I just kept going. I had no friend, like apart from the boys, I had no friends. So I just, whenever like an Aussie would come over and go, you want to go to Universal? And we live like 5 minutes from it. So let's go on the Jurassic Park ride. Come on. But yeah, no, we went over in October and we wrote there. We were there for 5 months.
Is this October of 2019?
Yeah,
so like a year ago.
Beautiful 2019.
Yeah.
Do you remember beautiful 2019?
Pre all
simpler
this
time.
COVID stuff. Jeez.
Beautiful 2019. And also beautiful early 2020.
Yeah, early 2020 wasn't too bad. And so you have like, is it Kristen Scholl, who is from Bob's Burgers? Well, that's where I know her from. She is the voice of the dishwasher character, which had tons of funny moments in that first step. How do you get involved with those? Is that through Ed, or is that just networking?
Well, it's we're massive comedy fans, and I listen to so much comedy in every different spectrum, and I always have. And this thing that happens with productions or big TV productions, and in America particularly, a producer doesn't actually produce the show. Like, this is the thing. Like, this is in the entertainment industry. It's very vague what a producer is or does.
Yeah.
So like the producers
people ask me all the time, and I'm just like, I don't know. Producer's just a fancy word for like a manager of stuff, I guess. But
the number one task of a producer is to be able to dodge the question, what is a producer? But anyway, so our producers needed someone to do a role called production services, which is a separate job. So production services are in charge of like managing budget, organizing cameras, hiring people, casting, all like the logistical stuff.
Which to me sounds like what a producer would do.
Yes, exactly right.
A producer is basically, in TV, a producer just tries to not get other people to do stuff so they can do as minimum as possible.
I think the role of a producer on TV is wearing a baseball hat, showing up, having a coffee, pointing fingers and shaking hands. Like Ed says it in the show. He's like, that's not what an executive producer does. He smiles, he shows up, he smiles, he shakes hands. That's it. Like, so I think, so they brought in Comedy Bang Bang to do their production services, and they, which is Scott Ackerman and the Comedy Bang Bang podcast and that entire team.
Yeah.
And, they just have a knack for connecting themselves with all the great people around comedy in LA. And when we moved over there, we kind of lost one of our biggest assets, which is our intel on who's funny. And because it's a big thing for us, is like when we bring people in, we just want to bring in the people who we think are the absolute funniest.
Yeah.
And when we moved to America, we didn't know anyone, and we know everyone who's here and we know who we love in Australia, but we didn't have that in America. So we had this show and we had to cast it and we didn't know anyone. So like with Scott Ackerman and their team's help, we leaned into them and got Paul F. Tompkins and Kristen Sharp, and it was literally just through favors and we're like, please, can you ask this person? And it was kind of nerve-wracking as well, because like I wrote it with the boys, and it's so embarrassing to have like Scott Ackerman, who I admire so much, and Ed and Weird Al Yankovic and Paul F. Tompkins and Kristen Schaal and all these people, and having them have to learn the lines you wrote and then perform them. I just spent the whole 5 weeks just going, I'm sorry about this. I don't just do. I'm sorry, because I was so embarrassed.
But do you think that's do you think that's that's more of an anxiety thing on your end? Like, they were probably really happy to do it, but you're just like, The
We're just
absurdity.
complete nobodies over there. Like no one knows who we are. At least over here, like to an extent, some people might have seen our stuff before or have been like, so you can go, you can have someone and go, hey, so you know what we're kind of doing here, but you've got to have like, we had like Homelander from The Boys, Anthony Starr, who was a massive fan, and he knew exactly who we are and what we're about. So it was cool to just riff around with him. But when you have like Scott and Mary Sohn, who's from the show AP Bio and stuff like that, you're just like, oh, so we're kind of fucked. That's our brand, is we're fucked. And
that's
so we're
such
doing
an
that.
apt description. Like that is such an apt description of you guys. What's
this is fucked.
I have to ask about Weird Al because I love Weird Al. Like what was he like to work with?
Yeah, well, to be candid, right? We had that role and we had like a list of all the most famous people and people we'd love to work with. And just like, as we went through the process, just like week after week of pass, like people saying, nah, I can't do it. Or like, not willing to, I guess not take the risk, but just like no interest in doing it. No, don't know who we are, and Scott and Weird Al are friends from the TV series Comedy Bang Bang.
Yeah.
And he showed up. He's an American icon and has been for like almost 40 years now.
He is
which
so
is crazy
good,
to think.
Like,
I
reckon The Saga Begins, which is the Star Wars parody of American Pie, is just it's one of my favorite songs of all time. Like I just think it's so funny and just like white and nerdy. Like all of his stuff is so on point.
There's a New York Times article that was just recently written about him and his career, and it's properly beautiful. Like, and it's a podcast as well. I recommend you go and listen to it because it's just like
I've heard good things about podcasts. I've heard big things about.
Well, they used to be the thing.
Yeah, before this Twitch business came in. Fuck that.
You should be twitching this. You should be twitching this. Like he's like, our kind of vibe has always been to like, we never punch down. We don't want to, we just want to make funny. And he's been the master of that for, for his whole career. All he does is go, he takes a thing and isn't it funny when you eat sandwiches like this? And it's just this simple joy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's like 60 now. He says yes we actually heard he'd like to be in your show.
Oh,
as opposed to please be in the show. He said he'd like to be in your show. I'm like, well, let's fucking get him in. He showed up. He he learned the script, like treated it with like immense respect. Every note that Max, our director, chucked at him, he did with his with the best he could. He watched our stuff. He was just so generous and polite and lovely. It was one of those just like, you hope every famous person you meet story goes like this, but he is a magical man. And he's 60 and he was jumping around in the grass and wrestling us and shit. It was the last day of shooting as well. And he was just so lovely and wonderful. It was like the most perfect ending. And he's a lovely guy.
Oh, amazing story, man. Can we circle back to, because you mentioned obviously you've worked with like tons of the Aussie people you find funny, and like obviously in Glenridge you had like Tony Martin, Pete Hellier, Demi Lardner. She was in Best Day of My Life.
She's in that. Yeah,
which is hilarious. Which is one of my favorite things from you guys. Best Day of My Life. Can we talk Glenridge, which started as a live show at the Comedy Fest, then became a YouTube mini-series kind of thing where you kind of readapted that live show as like on-screen stuff. What, like, because also in the first step, there's a few of your big sketches that you've kind of readapted for this show. What, like, how do you think about, like, first of all, what sketches to put on screen and kind of immortalize them on screen, and how does it change between being a live thing to being an on-screen thing? Like, is there a lot of thought on that? Yeah,
well, like the Glenridge was a really important live show for us because before that we'd written 6 or 7 shows live.
Yeah.
And we'd kind of been moving towards doing stuff that was going to be broadly appealing to everywhere we went, because like we went to Edinburgh in the UK and America and Canada, and we started to think like, okay, well, every joke we do needs to be work for them.
Yes.
And it got us to a point where things were going okay, but then we just got tired. And we just I remember it was like, we start to write shows about this time of the year every year. And we just sat down and we just went, oh, like, fuck it. Let's just write the most real, truthful thing that we possibly can. Like, let's write about going to high school and literally just do jokes that I remember in my head from when I was 12 and I think they're funny, and just writing to that. We wanted every joke to be great and we wanted to be great. And then Glenridge was the first time we went, no, let's just be funny and just make jokes that we find funny. And the response from the audience was very much just, this is great. And so we really liked it. And also Sammy J was really important for us. We had this mentality in our head where every time we did something was new, and we never used things more than once. So like if we made a live show, it was dead. And then we'd have to make a new YouTube show, and we'd have to make a new thing and a new thing and a new thing. And you mentioned Best Day of My Life. We wrote that we made an album of music, and Sammy was at our office and he just said, you should put some of these songs in your show. And he's like, it'll be great. You should, save you time, and they're good songs and people will like them live. And it was this kind of opening of a door where we kind of allowed ourselves to be able to do that. I don't know why we didn't before, but that gateway kind of opened us up to, well, then that song can become a whole show, and then that whole show can become a web series. There's no reason for us to have to kind of always be making things. Yeah. And because the show had gone so well live, we kind of realized that we had to, that people, hey, Zach's here. Do you want to say hello to Zach?
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. If he can, if he wants to.
Zach, come say hello to Radio Mike.
A surprise guest,
Radio
Zach.
Mike.
Hey, Zach.
Radio Mike.
Hey, Zach. We're just doing a podcast.
Mike.
It's the
just
new
talking
thing.
about the challenge of converting live stuff to YouTube stuff.
I find it easy.
He finds it easy.
Are we doing a joke one or?
It's kind of like, it's just a chat.
It's a bit of
just
fun.
a chat.
Yeah, it's just a casual
I
chat.
just came to find my phone in the office. I lost my phone, and I came to find it, and then Broden was doing an interview, and I thought,
You would have seen it in the video where I go like, I'm talking, and then I sort of just go
Yeah, I saw.
like that for a second. And then he closed the door, and I thought he might be listening. I said, do you want to meet Zach? And then here he is.
here I am, but I'm wearing my mask because I'm not, because it's really important. Even though we're on all zeros here in Victoria, Australia.
He can't hear you, by the way.
Yeah,
Mike.
I assume
hear
Zach
you at
can't
all.
hear me. Yeah.
All right, bye-bye. Hey, thanks so much for all your support, Radio Mike.
Thanks,
Hope
Zach.
Broden's treating you okay.
He's been up since 7. He's been up probably since 5.
I've had 2 hours sleep.
Congrats on the
ticked over
show,
the morning
Zach.
in Australia, and I was following them.
He said he hates the show. Yeah, so the idea was, sorry to just jump back in, you kind of shift things a little bit, like but mainly if that, like the whole thing is the core joke. If the core joke is truthful and funny, then all things come off it. I was really worried. We have this sketch about getting in and out of a kiln.
I love that.
And it's,
Love that.
and it's very like, we mime it on stage. It's very mimed.
Yeah.
And we literally built a kiln for it to shoot it. And I was worried it was going to slow it down and maybe it wouldn't work. And it just did. Because like at the core joke kind of works. So yeah, and that's the same with the live, with the new series. The same thing kind of applies.
Yeah, and I think like it's cool because with Glenridge, that was the show of the festival that year. Was it 2018? I think you did it at the festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Thank
So
you for
good.
saying that. That's very nice.
No, loved it. And then it was just awesome to see you were doing a whole thing about it online, and we kind of got to relive that because there was so many things in that show I wanted to see again. And like, I guess like, I mean, putting aside any like political stuff with this, but like since Summer Heights High in Australia, no one had really done the high school thing, and you guys just did it like really differently, but really, really well. And there's a sketch you do, the one where you're the teacher of the class holding them in at lunch. The moment when you put the number 1 on the board, right? I had completely forgotten that. Like, but yes, every teacher used to just go to the board and just write 1 for 1 minute. And I was like, oh my God, this is so so relevant to every kid who's ever been to school in Australia.
It's the ultimate power play of the teacher is that. That just means 1 minute into lunch or
And like,
whatever yeah.
Thinking about it now, it's just like, okay, 1 minute into lunch. Cool. Like that's literally nothing, but the whole class is like, oh no, Sarah, what the hell? It's so
He's built
good.
out of my first job out of uni after I finished acting school was touring kids theatre, like a in schools. They call them incursions.
Oh yeah,
and
I remember
it was
that.
and it was about it was a play about cyberbullying. And I was like, hey dudes, do you think you should share pictures of your penis around? No, that's not pretty cool. Let's rap about it. Yo, you got to treat everybody cool. So it was like that, and I wanted to die. And but every show, like the show was supposed to be really funny, and every show would start with the year level coordinator going, now a lot of you haven't handed in your essays. If you don't hand them in, you will fail the year level. You will be held back, and it's not. And they just talk, and you're just standing there really quietly, and they go, I'm not happy about it, and I've had enough. Start. And they go, oh, g'day, kids. Every school.
Like such an awkward beginning to you having to do your job.
And the other thing I wanted to mention on that is that when we put that video online, it's funny you mentioned that like it opened up a door in your head, because when it went online, people were so angry. Like they're like, this happened at my school, and the dictators, they're power crazy, and like people who just have unresolved shit in their heads that they never fix, and they're still like mad about some teacher when they're in 2005 ruining their life.
I just love as well, like again, the whole thing with that show, as you said, is just like moments where you're just like, wow, like it's almost like deja vu. It's like, yes, this exact thing happened. And the one where you're playing Foursquare, and well, we used to call it Foursquare, some people call it Downball or whatever, and it's like just saying replay, replay, and then there's one where I think it's Zach, and he's just like, that was good for you, like you won that. It's like, no, just replay it. I just think that's so funny. And then when you convince the teacher to join for a round and he blows the whistle, just it's so
that's my actual year 12 drama teacher, Mike Frensham.
It is not.
So he's a really awesome mentor for me, Mike. Like he came in, he was this drama teacher, and he like had just sort of started teaching, and he was in the film. He's an actor as well, and he was in the film Japanese Story. And it was he's a real actor. So I've stayed very good friends with him, and he's a lovely guy. And we thought, I was like, you have to be in this, because the thing as well is for me writing the show, I was like, okay, well, this will be my kind of ode to high school and my memories of high school, and then I can leave all those lovely thoughts and have made something of it. And then we made the show, and we finished, and people liked it. It's like, well, that's great. And then we were like, well, it did so well, let's make it into a web series. And then our producer went about finding a location, and it was really hard to find a school that would okay it. And every time I had an update, like, we're still looking. And I was just like, I just fucking know this is going to end up back at we're going to do this at my school. This is going to be at my school. And it did. Viewbank College in like Melbourne's northeast.
Okay.
And so like I had these memories, and then like a year later, I was literally back at my school in a school uniform in the places that I'd been thinking of, performing the jokes that like it was amazing. Way too much.
Yeah.
It was a real weird experience, but yeah, kind of cool.
That's awesome. Hey, we're really close to being done here, and I really appreciate your time. No. One thing that
no worries.
I'm gonna say is like a regular question on. Well, this is called Mike Talks, by the way. The podcast is called 20th Century Boy, but the Friday edition is called Mike Talks because I talk to people.
Makes sense.
I want it to be a regular question on Mike Talks, but I've only asked one other person, who was last week's episode.
This is good.
Yeah.
This is good.
This is just totally irrelevant to everything else. What is one album that you think everyone should listen to? It doesn't have to be your favorite album, just an album that you like that you think everyone should hear. It can be Aunty Donna's album. which is a great album.
I have, if I turn the camera this way, you'd see 9,000 of them in boxes. So if you do think, I will give you 1 billion.
That's oddly familiar because I actually have a band with, do you know Jack Post from Hamish and Andy, who is like cackling Jack Post?
Yes. Yep.
So we did a little band as a side project, and like we got a bunch of CDs printed. We actually, I mean, we definitely printed less than you. I think we printed like 100, but we've still got another 30, and every 6 weeks or so, I just do an Insta saying, the CDs are selling out. Make sure you get your copy. They're not selling out. I've got a tub full of them. If you want one, send me a message and I'll send it to you.
The transition from like a creative person, like with merchandise, going to like I value this to I value this less to get this shit out of my house is a lovely journey.
Yeah.
Okay, my album. I love this album. I know I was never a Beck fan really before this, but his album Colors, which came out in maybe 2014.
Okay.
2015.
Yep.
I think it's just like he's a great songwriter and creator.
Yeah.
And he just made this pop album, and I love every song on it.
Cool.
It's not my favorite album of all time, but it could very well be of the last decade. I just love it. Colors.
Nice. Oh, awesome, man. Well, okay, we'll do one more quick question because we've got 45 seconds before we
Let's start a tradition.
One movie you think everyone should see as well.
Oh, even better. Okay, well, I've decided recently that my favorite director is Bennett Miller, who he made Capote in the 2000s.
Yeah.
He made Moneyball.
Yes.
And he made Foxcatcher.
Okay.
And I love him so much. He's just got this awesome style. And my favorite of the 3 films is Moneyball.
Cool.
Even if you're not a sport fan, it's just it's one of those films that every time it's on, it just hooks me in immediately. It's beautiful storytelling. It's super engaging. It's wonderful performances. It's awesome soundtrack. I think it's possibly my favorite movie.
It sounds like it the way you're talking it up. Sounds really good.
Mr. Sunday Movies, the Weekly Planet, their editor, whose name escapes me at the moment, he did a visual essay on Bennett Miller and the way he directs, which is on YouTube, and it's awesome. Really, really cool if you want to check that out. But also, you can also just watch Moneyball, Capote, and Bennett, and what's the other one? Foxcatcher.
Awesome. Broden Kelly, it has been a pleasure talking to you on Mike Talks. Aunty Donna's new show, Aunty Donna's, it's Big Ol' House of Fun, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So go watch that on Netflix now, and that's available everywhere, like even if you're international from Australia, it's still there, yeah?
Mainland China and North Korea, unfortunately, can't watch it.
Okay.
But 190 countries, yeah. And thank you for having me on and being so lovely and supportive to us. We really appreciate it.
No worries, man. Aunty Donna podcast, Aunty Donna YouTube channel, and Broden Kelly is my name on Instagram, so go follow Broden there. Thank you so much, man. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, man.
This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.